Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Soul Focused Radio. This is your host, Martin Friedman, and I am solo today. We are transitioning, as you know, and right now Martina has not been able to align her schedule, so it's just me today, and I'm super excited to introduce our new co-host along with Martina and some other voices you're going to be hearing, some familiar, some new, coming up soon. And today I will be interviewing Christin Farmer, giving you all an opportunity to meet Christin. I'm not going to really spend a lot of time here because Christin really tells her story and her relationship to Soul Focus Group. I'm so excited to have her voice and her perspective, as you're going to hear. It's an incredible perspective. And with that, I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm just going to turn it over to the interview. And here we go, meeting Christin Farmer.
When you come to the Soul Focus Group, you come to an acknowledgement that there has been injuries done to us from all these different forms of oppression. Injuries that have impacted our subconscious mind, our heart, our spirit, our very soul. So at the Soul Focus Group, we recognize that and we focus on healing. Healing, the return or the recovery of our connections to our healthy self, our beautiful thinking mind. We want you to come join us in a movement of healing all around the world to restore us back to our rightful state. At the Soul Focus Group, we heal.
All right, everybody. So as promised, I'm going to have a conversation with our newest co-host, Christin Farmer. Hey, Christin, how are you doing?
I'm good, Martin. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. We're in the same city. I'm here in Cleveland and taking care of business with my family and getting ready to do a workshop here. So I'm sharing this cold, wintry weather with you today.
Yeah, cold indeed.
Yeah. It's kind of nice to have the snow, to be honest with you, living in Florida. I know I'm laughing at myself right now because, we promise not to always talk about the weather, but when you come from Florida and then come back to where you grew up and it's snowing and you're driving around and it's kind of fun. So yeah, that's what I was feeling
nostalgic
today. Yeah, exactly. So, Christin, I wanted to, introduce you to our audience at Soul Focus Radio here today. Really, I was trying to think, like, how long have I known you? I think it's coming up on 3 years, right? Because I believe we met right before the pandemic in 2020. Was the workshop that you attended, Gatekeepers Academy, with myself, and another person. So we're coming up on 3 years since we met. And maybe just talk a little bit about yourself, who you are, and then talk a little bit about, how you got to know us at Soul Focus Group.
So I think that we met even before then, or at least I remember you because you facilitated the Racial Equity Institute work.
Right.
And that was the first time I saw you and my D. And that had to be in 2017, maybe.
Oh, wow.
So I would say 2016, 2017, but I'm leaning more to 2017. And at that time, I was very much engulfed in health equity work, specifically in the space of maternal and infant mortality. I founded an organization, a perinatal support organization, specifically that trained doulas or women to become doulas in an effort to decrease the infant mortality rate. And so race was a big part of that because, of course, when we get the statistics, everything is broken up by race. And according to those statistics, Black babies are 2.5 more times likely to not reach their first birthday than their white counterparts. And so as a part of our education and professional development, so to speak, I had my staff attend the Racial Equity Institute's work, which had to be at the time around 25 of us, including myself. So that was, again, the first interaction that I had with you and my D, And there was one more person who I can't remember, but that you all were the facilitators of that. So a lot happened after that time, because when I saw you all again in 2020, by that time you all were doing the Soul Focus group, the Gatekeepers Academy. And I'll share this story here. I've shared this with you before. I almost didn't attend that. Because by that time I was burnt out of racial equity anything. And of course, when I saw your name and my D's name, I was like, oh gosh, I cannot go through another racial equity anything. So I almost didn't come. But I said, okay, let me sleep on it. And if spirit so moves me to go, then I'll go, because it was held at a location that's literally in walking distance from my house. So I was like, if it feels right to go in the morning, then I'll go. And so I made the decision that morning to go. And I'm so glad that I did, because it was absolutely different from the Racial Equity Institute. And it was sort of the thing that my soul was searching for. It was like you all were like using words that resonated with me, where I otherwise would kind of feel crazy when I'm talking to other people about, focusing on the inside out and the ego and reducing the ego, and being in solidarity with yourself before you can be in solidarity with other people. And I wasn't necessarily using those terms, but I know that I kept running into this wall, and specifically in this nonprofit space where it was so focused on systems. And that's what racial equity is really focused on, is systems. And I kept saying, I'm like, well, but what about the individual people and their individual power to change their circumstances, regardless of what's happening on the outside and externally? Are we just to give away all of our power and just say, hey, we have to wait until people decide to treat us better? I mean, that logic to me didn't make sense around, us waiting for people to say we're equitable or we're equal. And, and that whole thing for me didn't sit right either, because I don't believe that anybody can be equal or equitable, whatever we call it. To me, it's semantics, because all of us are unique. And to try to make my standard your standard takes away from my autonomy. And again, I just moved into this space where I felt myself becoming more and more disconnected from the work, at least in the way in which the work was being executed. And so when I sat through Gatekeepers Academy, it was like a breath of fresh air. Then I was like looking forward to coming back to day 2. And I still have all of the notes from that 2-day session. And it just resonated with me so much that shortly after, maybe a year later, I actually quit my job and quit everything in nonprofit. I sat on 6 boards, and I left everything at one time. And only thing that I looking back, can say really contributed to that is just my soul was yearning to go on this journey to find my authentic self, so that I could do work from that place and from that space. And I have to say that you all were very instrumental, and that very much a part of that beginning stage for me, just based off of the work that you all showed us or talked to us about that day. Because before then, I really felt isolated in my perspective.
Yeah, that's powerful. I want to hear a little bit more about that part of it. Like, what were you starting to feel that was no longer resonating with you when the conversation was primarily focused on racism? I know it's nothing specific to the Racial Equity Institute,
right?
It was, from what you and I have talked about, it was something about the constant focus on racism. What was it about that was not sitting right with you and starting to make you feel isolated?
I was angry all the time. I had a lot of anger and a ton of anxiety. And who I am authentically is neither one of those people. Like, I'm not an angry person, and I'm not a person that has anxiety, but I would find myself when I had to go to meetings and when I had to go into, certain presentations or spaces, that I would be riddled with anxiety. And throughout those meetings, I would feel myself getting like hotter and hotter as we talk so much about this race, around race and equity, because a part of it was like, okay, it's not that it's just Black babies that are dying. Like, why do Black people have the worst outcomes in everything? Like we're talking about even the racial equities first day, the half day or groundwater. I distinctly remember in that presentation, and Martin and MID, the two of you wasn't a part of this. This was two people who I hadn't seen. I didn't see ever again after that, actually, but they did this presentation, and on it, they sort of broke down health disparities and the achievement gap and the juvenile justice system. And it was two more, but it was these different sectors, and it basically said the same thing, but it just had different language. And so my question more so became, well, why is it that Black people had the worst outcomes and everything? But the answer that I kept receiving and the messages I kept receiving was just, oh, well, it's systemic racism. And so I kept saying to myself, like, okay, I can accept that, but isn't there an element of this personal development and accountability, and you having power within yourself to say, despite all of these things or systems or laws or whatever you want to call it that have been put into place, what can I do? Because we understand on a human level that we can't change anyone else. The only person we can change is ourselves. So I started to get to this place of, well, how can I change myself, me right now, so that I don't feel so angry and I don't feel so anxious over these statistics and sort of the messages that I'm receiving, even in the media, around police brutality and just all of these different things that seemed targeted, more so to Black people. And the answer for me in terms of how can I change myself was I had to remove myself from that space. I had to get off of Facebook. I had to just stop reading the news, watching the news. I had to make these changes within myself so that I wasn't constantly being exposed to things that made me angry and anxious. And so that was, and when that happened for me, a lot in my life changed. And perhaps the biggest thing was just my perspective. What I know is, and I remember seeing this quote years ago that says something to the effect of, when you begin to change the way you see the world around you begins to change. And I believe that. And at the time when I decided to, it's the funny thing, and that's why I love even the name of this group, the Soul Focus Group, because I'm really, really into metaphysics. I'm really into, the consciousness, the subconscious, the law of attraction, or really just 12 spiritual laws. And that's pretty much how I live my life and my thinking. And I wish I could tell you when I made that choice specifically to leave nonprofit in total and why. But the truth is, I did not know why specifically at the time that I was leaving. My soul just told me it was time to go. And I remember calling an emergency meeting with my board chair at the time and saying to her, I just had this feeling that's over me. I really can't articulate it, but I know that my time here and in this space is coming to an end. And I can't even tell you when. I just know that I'm feeling this draw that's getting closer and closer. That's telling me it's almost time to go. So I didn't have an answer, and I was scared. I was really scared because I didn't know what was waiting for me on the other side. It was a moment in my life where I actually had to put my faith in what I claimed I believed all this time. And that's one of the spiritual laws too. It's the principle of demonstration, or the law of demonstration, that basically states that if you say that you believe a thing, then there will come a time where you will have to demonstrate that you believe.
Hmm.
And that was a time where I had to demonstrate if I believe in a higher power, I believe in metaphysics, if I believe in the think, feel, be philosophy, then I have to surrender and I have to trust and I have to follow that. And I have to say that I do not regret that decision at all. It's the best thing that ever happened to me because it allowed me to see this world from a perspective that I wasn't privy to before because I was still relying so much on humans as opposed
Sure.
to a higher power. It made me see the bigger picture and all of our interconnectedness. And a big part of that is a part of the soul focused philosophy when you all say, what does it mean to be 100% on your own side? And at that time, even though I didn't know it, I was acting and being 100% on my own side.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were 100%. And, when you talk about the spiritual aspect of it, I'm remembering. So, what you experienced as Gatekeepers Academy is definitely like our first attempt to start to bring a sort of next level product, a next level experience to Cleveland after all the people here have gone through, some type of racial equity training, whether it was the 3-hour or a 1-day or a 2-day experience. And, just really trying to offer that next level. And so you experienced that, then the pandemic hit and, and I stopped training with all organizations other than, putting all my time and energy into the Soul Focus group. But I really wanted to get back into Cleveland. And so I reached out to, some people that I was, have felt pretty close to here and built really good relationship with. And, we made like brief contact, but then we were going to have a longer conversation and they were going to set something up and I never heard back from them. So a little bit after that, I was thinking about Cleveland and like your name popped up in my mind. And it was either later that day or the next day, I got forwarded an email of you reaching out to like our contact link on our website. And that blew me away because I had just thought, about you and I hadn't thought about you in a long time. And then I just thought about you. And then within 24 hours, I get this forwarded email that you're trying to reconnect to Soul Focus Group. And that blew me away. So you talk about like higher power and the spiritual nature of this work. That's when I knew that it was definitely, meant to reconnect with you about bringing this work back to Cleveland. And also then, very quickly you becoming a part of what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, we are all weirdly interconnected. Everything in this world is weirdly interconnected, as above, so below. And so I believe in that, whether we call it synchronicity or coincidence or, but I just really call it energy and just being in sync because when I was able to wash away everything that had experienced before, what stuck out to me was the Soul Focus group. Like I was still thinking about what was shared at the Gatekeepers Academy, which had been 2 years prior when I reached out to you all. So for 2 years, I was still sitting on some of the things that we discussed in that class. And I mean, it was a lot of huge points. And I think the biggest one that I always share with you all is about the NASA study. And that just really changed something within me because then I suddenly realized that I wasn't operating at my 98%. And I was like, oh, I got to get back there. And I knew that I couldn't get back there doing what I was doing at the time. So if you want a different result, you have to do something different. And that was my way of doing something different by leaving a familiar territory. And honestly, a territory that I've seen a ton of success in, right? That I raised a ton of money in, that I was just very well connected in. And I left that to find me And again, I do not regret that at all. It's the best thing that has ever happened to me. I'm so much more in tune. I'm so much more wise. I feel free. And I mean, I really love where I am now. And that's not something that I could have said those 3 years ago.
I mean, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful to hear. And a lot of what I'm picking up in this conversation for both you and for myself is, how do we trust in those spiritual laws that you talk about? How do we trust in the universe? And that a huge part of being 100% on our own side is letting go of trying to force things to happen. When you say we're weirdly connected, the way I think about that, Christin, is that we are all connected, and then our vibrations will match up in certain ways. So I knew you were really into this because we had a conversation with Cleveland folks, not that long after we did the Gatekeepers Academy, and I knew you told your story. So I knew that. I hadn't thought about you in a while. I'm going to be really honest with you too. I actually forgot your name, So at some point I reached out to somebody. I was like, what was her name again? So, but the reason why your name came to me and our connectedness matched up, our vibrations matched up, is because I thought I had to bring Soul Focus Group to Cleveland in a very specific way. And I really let go of that. And as soon as I let go of thinking that I had to do something in a certain way, then this opened up, this connection to you opened up. And then the next day we hear from you. And so that to me is like a part of being, when we talk about being 100% on your own side, letting go and trusting. I had this conversation with my D earlier today, letting go and trusting that everything is set up for you by the universe. It's just a matter of you creating room to receive it. And that's what I did. And I didn't even know I was doing it. I just let go of thinking that things had to be a certain way here in Cleveland. And as soon as I let go of it, you came into the picture.
Yeah. And what you speak of is sort of a concept that I was going over today. It's like the thought or the subconscious and conscious mind. But in another way to phrase it is, having the thought, like just deciding, like making a decision, knowing what it is that you want to do and not being worried about the how, just being able to formulate the thought and decide, definitely, this is what I want to do. And then allowing yourself to assume the feeling or to sort of conjure up in your emotions how that would make you feel if that happened, and then allowing it to actually happen. But we get in our own way. We are our only problem, us. And so we get in the way of the things that we want because we think it has to be done a certain way, or we want to fret over the how. But whatever we allow our conscious mind to impress upon our subconscious mind gets to work immediately because it never turns off. It's 24/7. It's running on autopilot. So it doesn't have a sense of humor. It doesn't know right from wrong. It doesn't understand negative or positive. It only executes what the conscious mind has put on it. And so then with that, we do have to be very mindful of what we are thinking and what we are telling ourselves consciously. And most of us are telling ourselves negative things because we've sort of been conditioned to do that from an early age, which is a part of what has taken us away from that 98%. And so then, we really do call into our experience everything that comes into our experience. And most of us don't want to accept that because we're like, well, of course I didn't call this flat tire into my experience or this, whatever it is. But again, this goes back to, I always felt that it was something deeper, and I did not want to just leave my fate in somebody else's hands because I'm Black and somebody says that this is all happening because of systemic racism. I'm like, no, I have power over my mind. And as long as I have power over my mind, I have power over what comes into my experience, into my reality. So I don't know. That's weirdly connected to what you just said somehow. But I don't know why my heart just took me there to talk about
it. I think it's really connected. No, I think it's really connected because Well, this is how it's connected for me. And this is a lesson for me. Sometimes taking control of your own mind, like you just said, taking power of your own mind. For me, a huge part of that is letting go of stuff, and which wouldn't seem logical, right? It wouldn't seem logical. It would seem like, oh no, you have to focus more, concentrate harder. But for me, it's letting go of linear thought and how things have to be. And I think what you described is your version of the same thing. So there's this kind of linear concept that if you're black, ... this will follow. If you're white, this will follow, ... This will be your situation. If you're white, ... This will be your situation. If you're black, ... And what I hear you saying is that you, in taking back the power of your mind, one of the things that you did is you said, no, that doesn't have to be, just because, these things have been true to this point, it doesn't have to be my reality. And I actually have more say in my reality than this false construct of race, which has been handed to you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was forced on you, forced on me too,
Mm-hmm.
forced on all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, have you ever heard of a term called groundwater? Groundwater is another word we use at the Soul Focus Group that means subconscious programming. From the ages of 0 to 7, we are subconsciously programmed. So much information and choices and decisions are downloaded into our subconscious mind, and we begin to start living that life. And even though that life we're living is not the life we chose for ourselves, and it's not until we understand the impact of the groundwater, what the groundwater really is, that we begin to wake up to our own lives and begin to choose what we want for ourselves. At the Soul Focus Group, we bring you to that consciousness so that you can begin to choose the life you want to live for yourself.
I mean, could you talk a little bit about like how you were raised in terms of racial identity and stuff? Because I've heard you talk about it, and I think it would be really powerful to share, where you were coming from in terms of your relationship with being black, given your family.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was raised in a single parent household. My mother she was very militant, like power to the people, sort of militant. So I knew from an early age that I was black. And I remember at 5, and I think I shared this before, how going into kindergarten, my mother was already arming me with comebacks if someone said something about my skin tone because I'm dark skinned. So, she would say, if they say this about you, then you say this about them, and I'm like 5, like, oh, okay, So not only did I know I was black, but I also then got this message that because I was dark skinned, on top of being black, that was already going to be a problem, coming into school. And so my world was very much black and white because my uncles, which in my family I have, including my mother, is 9 of them. And let me see, I think all of my uncles, with the exception of one, were married to white women. And all of my grandmother, her brothers, they were all married to white women. So our family is a mixed family, so to speak. But my mother always made it a distinction, like that was a problem, like it was known that she didn't really care for that, the interracial relationships. And so, I mean, I remember even the time, this was probably 7 years ago, maybe, where she came over my house with a shirt on. I can't remember exactly what the shirt said, but we was having a family gathering. And I actually said to her, like, did you have to wear that here? You know what I mean? Just because I'm mindful and I don't like to make people feel uncomfortable, for no reason. But it was a shirt that was, I don't know, around black something, And so anyway, I've always grown up with that sort of knowledge around it being racism and interracial relationships, and somehow it was a problem with that. And then I wasn't really exposed, with the exception of my family, who I wasn't like around all the time. I had went to all Black schools when I was in primary school. When I went to college, I went to Kent State University, which is a small population of Black students there compared to white students. And so my son's father, who was my boyfriend in college, he used to always tell me that I was culture shocked. Because I never had went to school with white people, so it was changed for me because I had went to predominantly Black schools and then coming into predominantly white schools. But that was different from his experience because his family is Catholic and he went to Catholic schools. So his experience was the opposite of mine in terms of racial makeup and his school. So not saying that it made me feel uncomfortable, but it was noticeable. And, and I would be like, well, where are all the Black students at? Right. Like, so even though I didn't join like Black groups or a sorority or anything like that, it still at the time was kind of like this element of that. However, it also opened up the door for more diversity for me because then we had friends that were white or Hispanic that we kicked it with, and so it really wasn't a big deal for me. But I still kept the racism or, discrimination piece in the back of my mind and being mindful of that, even when I was going out for job interviews and, and things like that, because if you don't get the job, then even if you don't think it, somebody in your circle is saying like, oh, they probably did that because you're Black or they try, it's really just this rhetoric that like, we are just so used to and so comfortable with using. And now, like, since my perspective around race has completely changed, just because I am Black people still feel comfortable, saying certain things to me. Where I just a couple of days ago, I was just speaking to someone and they said, well, I think this person did this because I'm Black and they don't want to see me, be successful. And I was just like, I said, or that person just got a lot on their plate and they couldn't do the thing that you asked them to do. and that's okay. Right. And so, and just, also, I also said to this person, like, well, who cares? That's another human. Like, what do you actually believe? Do you believe in what you say you believe? Like, you told me that you was of faith. So do you really believe that? And if you do believe that, then a single person does not have anything to do with your success or failure. So again, my perspective has shifted so much from where I was 3 years ago, even a year or so ago. I mean, I don't look at race in that way anymore. It was so limiting for me. And so growing up in that, it making a big deal about it. And then as I sort of got older on my own, I didn't really make a big deal about it. But when I got back into when after graduation and getting into nonprofit, then it was a big deal again, because every statistic, everything that is shown to you is always broken down by race, so much so that it's like you can't help it, because nonprofit generally is the social justice realm. And so every piece of information you get is something around, men are against women because, the pay gap, or it's, the racial thing because of the criminal justice system and education. And it's like, you can't get away from it. And again, I would get so angry. I think I was more so angry that I didn't see or feel like there were any actual solutions being proposed. I kept being like, I don't want to meet with y'all anymore. Like, what is the solution? I mean, I can't keep coming here and I'm just leaving these meetings angry. And I'm walking into these meetings. Oh, that's a good way to put it. I was walking into the meetings anxious and leaving angry. I mean, and it was consuming me. It was consuming everything, so much so that I'm telling my son, as he's growing up, which I've had to have so many talks with him now, because of my changed perspective, is just, this automatic thing that we are to do. Like, okay, well, you're a Black boy in America, so you have to, watch out and do this, and it's like, I look back on that, it's like, why would I be still in fear? I'm instilling fear into my child's psyche to say that. That's not to say don't be aware. No, you should always be aware. You should always be mindful. But this whole notion that somebody is out to get you just because of your skin color is, if you believe that, then it's true. Because again, our subconscious mind doesn't have a sense of humor. It doesn't know whether you're joking with it. It doesn't know right or wrong. It's only responding to what your conscious is putting upon it. So if you are consciously in fear, then you are impressing upon your subconscious that you have something to fear. And so your subconscious is just going to bring you things that you fear. And the other thing too, for me, when it came to the racial thing, was it wasn't just me looking at this from the perspective of, okay, well, Black people have been done wrong for centuries and deserve some sort of compensation or some for this to be rectified in some way. But I also felt like, well, okay, well, white people just supposed to feel bad for existing, for being, you know what I mean? Like, it's not helpful at all. We coming into these spaces and we trying to make people feel a sense of guilt or shame, And so what I found, or what I saw more so, was that because of my anger, I was at a place where I had felt like I couldn't trust white people. And I also felt like I couldn't trust Black people, because what then I was beginning to see was that I was like, oh, well, then it seems to me what I'm looking at is that, well, then Black people can't wait to be in these certain positions and in these certain rooms so that they can do the same thing that they claim white people are doing to them. And so it doesn't solve the issues, though. It perpetuates it. And it's just the exchanging of this said power structure that we claim. And I see this playing out now. So it is not going to get any better until, as you all are continuing the work that you all are doing with the Soul Focus Group, the work that I have been working on around personal development and accountability, or else the oppression will just change hands. And that's what I see happening.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. A couple things come to mind, and then I think we're coming, close to the end of our first talk here, first of many, because I have so many questions and get so many ideas. And I think the next time we talk, hopefully it's with Martina or my D or someone else, where we can really talk about like what you want to talk about on these podcasts. But I think just to close out today, I want to be really clear with what I hear you saying. So you're not saying that historical racism hasn't existed. Like, that there's been employment, there's been a lot of discrimination in employment, even to get called in for an interview, right? People base it on the name. So you're not saying, I just want to be really clear, I don't hear you saying that those things aren't true, that they haven't existed or still don't exist now. Correct. But what I'm hearing you say is what you can control is your reaction to it. And we talk a lot about subconscious programming. Like, literally what you're saying is you're not going to just allow the subconscious programming that you are handed, as a Black woman growing up in Cleveland. You're not going to just accept that, but you're going to say there's other ways I can react to this. Not saying it's not true, but there's other ways I can react to it. That's what I hear you saying. Correct.
It's empowering yourself to understand and know that you are the creator of your own reality. And if you are saying that other people have control over what you can and cannot do, then you have just given away your power. And why would you do that? Why would you willingly do that? If you become conscious of your ability to create your own reality, then why are we still handing it off in the name of racism?
Yeah, I think that's a good mic drop moment. I think that's a good mic drop moment because what you're saying then is racism still in control.
Yeah.
And that it's not saying that racism doesn't exist. It's just controlling the reaction to it and not allowing it to run everything that we do. Otherwise, and staying in that victim place, I hear you saying too. So yeah, this has been awesome. There's so much I want to ask you. One thing, I was going to do it today, but we're running out of time. But I want to spend a whole session talking to you about Cleveland, because I don't get to just talk about Cleveland very often. And maybe we can have a guest on or two, to talk about it too. But just, what it's like being from here, how you grew up here, how you see Cleveland. You've been here your whole life. I was here a long time, and then I left for a long time. But Cleveland's always been in my heart, and I've always come back. I will keep coming back. Even after I don't have any living relatives anymore, I'm going to keep coming back. I'm thinking about buying a house here. And, just feel very connected and invested in Cleveland's healing and Cleveland's growth. So that's something I really want to talk to you about. And we can talk off air, like how we want to do that. But I just want to tell you that I really like talking to you, Christin, because you're very Cleveland to me. You know what I mean?
I am.
And I'm saying that as a positive.
Yeah, yeah. I get it.
Yeah. If you ever meet Christin, she's very likely to be wearing a hoodie that says, what does it say?
I got it on right now. Made in the Cleveland hood.
Made in the Cleveland hood.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it can be challenging to be here. The energy can be challenging here, but it also can be a lot of beautiful things. So I'm so excited to have you on as one of our new co-hosts. Can't wait for us to just really build some strong momentum with this podcast. So just thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you all so much for inviting me to co-host this. One of my favorite things to do is talk.
100%. Well, you're in the right place. All right, Christin, thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Martin.
My genius, my power, my optimal functioning. My genius, my power, my optimal functioning. Repeat after me. My genius, my power, my optimal functioning. That is the jingle of the Soul Focus Group, because we are dedicated to helping you recover your genius, your power, and your optimal functioning. We want you to recognize the unique way that you comprehend things, express yourself, experience, and create in the world. We want to help you recover your genius, your power, your optimal functioning.
Well, that was an awesome conversation. And listening back to it before recording this outro, I'm just really excited to have Christin on here. As you can see, it's definitely easy to vibe with Christin. So much introspection, so much self-awareness, vulnerability in telling her story. Christin definitely has gone through a transformation that she's more than happy and willing to share, that's in so much alignment with what we do at Soul Focus Group. So needless to say, I am very, very happy to have her on our team. I believe this is going to help us grow and move forward. We're going to be interviewing different people with different perspectives. And we're just so excited with the direction that we're going at Soul Focus Group. And we're so happy and so excited to have you as part of that journey. You are our family, and you are helping us to expand. You are sending people to soulfocusedgroup.com, and you're referring our podcasts and all of our information to other people. And we so appreciate you doing that. Know that we love you, know that we care about you, and we're so excited to expand our family, expand our reach at Soul Focus Group. This is a movement. This is a movement, a next level movement, away from just fighting and towards creating what we want in this world. And we're so glad to have you as a part of it. So with that, we will ask you, as always, that you stay safe, stay well, and most of all, stay soul focused.